Do you think long term with these new transfer rules, this is something that I, I still don't have a fully formed opinion of this. Some of this, of course, we're going to have to see how it plays out. But do you think these new transfer rules kind of handcuff smaller conferences, like, for example, the Mountain West Conference that the Lobos play in, or does it open up? Do you see it more as like opening up more opportunity?
I think ultimately it opens up more opportunity because some schools are going to get hurt. You have a player of the year in a smaller conference. He's going to go jump for that Power 5, Power 6 program in college basketball. It's going to happen. And I don't blame him for taking the opportunity because he earned it on the basketball court. But then it's learning the new system because the Mountain West has benefited from guys pretty much transferring down as opposed to leaving. So I think in terms of like New Mexico, where the Mountain West is, I think they're in a good mix to get some of those guys that might need a second chance, or even some of the guys that have performed better in other mid-major conferences. But it's definitely going to change the game. I don't think it's going to bring down college athletics. It's going to be different. Like fans, if you're used to seeing these guys 3 or 4 years, that's going to be rare. And I get it. And that can be frustrating. But once I think coaches settle in and understand the transfer portal, understand that conversation is going to be ongoing, you're going to deal with maybe a little bit more egos when guys get upset if they're not getting the playing time right away. I think it will settle down, especially with name, image, and likeness coming into the game. I think we're already seeing that play a big impact with over the last week or so. Some of the guys that withdrew their name from the NBA draft. And a lot of those guys actually surprised me that they're coming back for their sophomore season. So I think ultimately it'll work itself out. But college sports, it got big business and it was time to adjust to that. And we're seeing that happen right now.
Yeah. Do you think that in a way, kind of almost like more capitalist mindset in college sports, do you think that spreads out the talent? Like, for example, maybe you have the talent to be the star player at Louisville, but you're like 5th on the depth chart in Duke, let's say, at Duke. I mean, do you see this as again more of a solution than a problem with the endorsements, or do you think there's still more incentive to kind of form together in these traditional powers?
I think when it comes to the top 100, 150 prospects, there's going to be no change there. They're still going to go to the blue blood programs. It's going to be interesting, though, to see what happens to some of the under the radar kids. And I think that's where the biggest, to your point, is the development. Who's going to be willing to develop kids? Who's going to find those diamonds in a rough? Because we're already hearing a lot of college coaches say they're not looking at high school players. They're only going to look at college kids because they know what they have if they've seen the guy play on the Division I level. So I don't think it's going to spread the talent out across the board more so. I just think what it actually does is it allows the coaches that are willing to take a chance, that bring in high school players, that find some of those guys. It's going to give them an edge when some guys get caught up in just trying to hit the transfer portal and bring in a bunch of D1 guys.
I wanted to bring up one more thing with regards to these NCAA rule changes, because I don't know, even on sports media, I don't think people have really exaggerated at all how massive these rule changes are with the instant transfers, with name, image, and likeness. I mean, this is really a historic year for college sports. And I wanted to ask just one more question about this. The NCAA historically has spent so much time with disciplinary action. I mean, you think of like the Reggie Bush situation, back in the mid 2000s. You think of like Ohio State football players getting in trouble for signing jerseys, things like that. What do you see? How do you see the role of the NCAA changing? And do you think that because they don't have to focus on some of this stuff, maybe we get a more quality product on the college side?
I think the NCAA is asking themselves that exact question right now, is like, what are we doing other than sponsoring sports? Because they
kind of making tournaments, huh?
Right? Yeah, they're like, oh, we have the NCAA tournament. Because when you look at college football playoff is out of their hands now. The bowl system is not necessarily ran by the NCAA either. So I think they're just trying to sit back and go, we spent so much time arguing against these things and trying to hide behind amateurism that as the game grew, they didn't, and they stayed stuck in place, and they are in a bad spot right now, is because everyone else is making the decisions for them, and it's not them. And they need to read the room at this point in time. I look at, name, image, and likeness and how much they push back against that. I'm like, did you not just see this shoe scandal? Like, the FBI was investigating y'all, and you didn't think, all right, maybe it's time to adjust. Maybe we need to get things above board on paper, get these athletes in better position so we can try to push some of that stuff away, make it harder for these guys to get in there and just try to make money off these players. Because I think if they embraced name, image, and likeness earlier and realized that, because it's the one I always laugh at. Everyone just gets caught up in car dealerships, right? Like, oh, a car dealership is going to like a car and $100 one day a week. I'm like, well, if that's the case, then more power to you, because I think what we're also going to find out is some of these dudes might not be as marketable as they thought. It's real life. It's reality is hitting them.
That's true.
But if they embrace name, image, and likeness earlier, then they would not be staring down the barrel at paying student athletes on top of that. Like, that could have got them out of the way, saying, hey, here's your scholarship, full ride, fantastic. You want to make some off your name, image, and likeness, cool beans. Here's the contract. Here's the people that can help you. University can set that up. Fantastic. But they pushed against it for so long when millions of dollars were coming in. And it's not just looking at these athletic departments, because I know, like, the University of New Mexico is not rolling in the dough. Yeah. The NCAA is. Yeah. You look at that and you go, you don't see this model ever breaking. You don't see this billion-dollar basketball tournament ever becoming an issue with players pushing back, with saying, hey, can we get something? They're not asking for like $48 million a year. They're saying, hey, most of these guys, the 3 to 4 years in college is the only time they're going to be able to profit off being a student athlete, or men and women. And I think name, image, and likeness also is exceptional for the Olympic athletes and women's basketball. You look at the Cavs sisters at Fresno State, their TikTok following, they immediately signed one of the first deals with name, image, and likeness. I think track and field athletes can have a huge benefit from this, because we're actually seeing a lot more athletes that want to go pro, want to pursue Olympic dream, actually leaving college earlier. And I don't think that's good for anyone if we have to leave. But if you can stay, still go to school, still represent your country, your university, and make some money off wearing a pair of Nikes, that's a positive that will only help college athletics as a whole.
Well, I think it's baffling, the arguments that I've heard in terms of like other players getting jealous of one person getting like an endorsement. It just seems like the counter arguments seem ridiculous to me. And I think, JJ, you brought up a good point. Like, I think a lot of the discussion on this issue is focused on college basketball, men's college basketball and football, where, like you said, there are, Olympic athletes that can totally capitalize off their name and likeness that, previously they couldn't because they're going to college. And I think this opens up that door. It also gives exposure to the university too, with the, how many people really care about Fresno State on TikTok? And you mentioned those sisters. Now they do, right? So it's a win-win for everybody. So it's just, I think the old mentality it's baffling to me, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's one that we're going to see schools start to realize how impactful this can be, because we've already seen schools lay it down. Like, you can't use our facilities, you can't wear our logo when you're doing this. And I'm sitting there going, how does that make sense? Like, how would you not want your student athlete maybe standing in front of the pit or wearing that Lobo shirt in the commercial? That is more publicity for you, because then in the recruiting game, it's always going to be nasty. It's always going to be dirty. We're already seeing it. I think it's LSU put it out there, and they're like, boom, you come here, you can rep us, you can use our facilities. And other schools are saying no. Well, you're just putting yourself behind again, because it's marketing. It's positive. The dude is selling a freaking Subway sandwich wearing a Lobo shirt in front of the pit. Like, that's just a positive for your university.
Agreed. Absolutely.